I've got 10 o'clock. Do you want to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm ready when you are.
Welcome, everyone. You are in the innovation zone using Esri technology for forest inventory, providing a scalable, affordable, and cloud-based solutions. The speakers today are Mark Brooks of Landmark Spatial Solutions and Carrie Halligan of Mason, Bruce, and Gerard. And I am going to hand it over to them. If you could just keep yourselves muted throughout the talk, and at the end we'll do Q&A. So save your questions for the end. They want to kind of get through the presentation and then open it up for dialogue. Enjoy.
Well, thank you, Cindy, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Brooks, and together with Carrie Halligan, we'll be discussing and demonstrating different options for applying Esri technology for forest inventory. So let's start off with some introductions. So next slide, Carrie.
Yep. All right, here we go.
There we go. Great. So I'm a certified forester of the geospatial variety and the geospatial services manager for Landmark. Landmark is a forest technology company of foresters and agronomists providing clients throughout the U.S. sales, training, support, GIS consulting, repairs, and equipment rentals. We have 3 locations located in Mississippi, Georgia, and Virginia. We are an Esri Silver business partner. Our simple goal in business is to help clients become more profitable, accurate, efficient, and professional through the use of technology. And we realize sometimes this is a challenge because us foresters, we go to forestry school so we can be in the woods and not sit in front of a computer. So we know this, and our motto is Forestry Technology Simplified. We simply want to set you up for success.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Carrie Halligan. I'm with Mason, Bruce, and Gerard. We're a natural resources consulting firm out of Portland, Oregon, and we've been in business since 1921. So we're looking forward to our 100th year anniversary next year. We had previously been thinking we were going to give you all plane tickets and fly you out to celebrate with us next year, but due to COVID, we've had a little change in plans, so we'll keep you posted on that one. The picture here on the right is of David Mason, the founder of our firm. And then just to the left of that is a picture of myself impersonating David Mason 2 years ago at our Halloween party. So in the spirit of Halloween, I thought I'd put that photo up, keep it nice and light. As I mentioned, we're based out of Portland, Oregon. We also have offices in other locations in Oregon and Colorado, California, and Virginia. We are Esri Silver business partners as well, and we've been business partners with Esri for over 25 years. And so we work to provide software solutions and a whole range of forestry services. And you can see we've got our website link down there on the bottom. And we also have a virtual booth here at the SAF conference, so stop by and say hello.
I'd like to tell you a little bit about our partnership. So Landmark was looking for more modern solutions to support clients' changing needs. And MB&G's mobile map and inventory manager fit modernization needs for cloud-based, Esri-centric Android solutions. MB&G was looking for partners with expertise in hardware and new regions, forest types, and markets. New software options for compilation and reporting. And our T-Crews and expertise in the rugged hardware are helping MB&G's client leverage more powerful solutions in the office and the field. The partnership began at the beginning of this year, 2020, and our collective goal is to improve and expand and integrate our company's proven solutions. So the agenda for today is to talk about the Esri technology, and in particular, the ArcGIS platform. We want to showcase a solution that extends the ArcGIS platform. We'll have a demo and then end with questions and answers. So let's take a step back and think about why we would want to use a GIS-based solution. And that's because forest data are spatial data. And this reduces the need for multiple data management systems. It reduces the import, export, convert, join, integrate, and migrate complicated workflows. It enables better and quicker decision-making. You can always see data on a map. You can easily combine spatial parameters when searching and analyzing. It also promotes collaboration. So if we are going to consider a GIS solution, then we really must consider Esri and the ArcGIS platform for forest inventory. Esri is the largest GIS company in the world by market share, and that market share is even higher in forestry. By doing so, we can tap into current and future employees already having Esri knowledge and skills, and there's a full suite of products and tools to help support forest data management. Lots of databases, web applications, and mobile maps. And if you'll just take a look to that graphic in the middle on the right, it really explains a lot about what technology is available. It's the Esri cloud that connects the various pieces to create a web GIS, providing robust functionality, including sharing. Next slide. So let's take a look at that ArcGIS platform. So, of course, it includes desktop, which ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro, server capabilities, whether it's Portal for Enterprise, ArcGIS Online. We have apps, mobile apps, Collector and Survey 123, web applications, ArcGIS Online, dashboards, and the web app builder. So if we had more time, we really would have liked to have gotten into and shown you a few examples of Collector and Survey 123. What we'd like to point out is just that you realize this is amazing technology for sharing data, even if you're just sharing data with yourself. And that means no more data silos. And it also means no more cables. Foresters are really good at being able to convert one thing to another. But that's not necessary as much anymore. So we encourage everyone to try out Esri's out-of-the-box solutions if you haven't already. This will be a great way to understand the technology better and also refine your workflows and work needs. So related to this, be sure to check out Esri's brand new mobile app called Field Maps, which is promising to be a game changer by combining the functionality of many other apps. Okay, next slide. So there are gaps for forest inventory, and why is that? So realize that we have the data models available from Esri, and the Esri forestry data models is a good starting point. But most organizations need custom models, forestry-centric workflows. So those kind of are a little bit complicated. We have plot layout, complex business logic, quality assurance, quality control, and we'd like to integrate with other systems for compilation and growth and yield. And when it comes to forestry-centric apps, Collector, it's great for general GIS data collection, but maybe not so great for cruising. Now, web app builders make useful web maps, but they can't necessarily perform the plot layout, check cruise scoring, compilation, etc. So when we take a deeper dive, we realize that there's some gaps out of these box solutions. And so what are we to do about this gap? So we would suggest to extend the ArcGIS platform and thereby leveraging the capabilities of ArcGIS, its databases, security, data access, its expert tools, web apps, and mobile apps, and leverage the investment that the company's already made and the fact that staff already have these skills. And so we can extend it by developing custom data models, the business logic that is required. It can be designed with this forestry-centric workflows, and then the forestry-centric web apps and mobile apps. And so next we'll take a closer look at out-of-the-box solutions and an extended solution in a consumer report format. And there we go. So we've compared several things on the left: Survey 123, Collector, Mobile Map, ArcMap, ArcGIS Pro, and ArcGIS Online, and Inventory Manager. And the great news is, looking at the first column, all of these will be able to create and edit spatial data. Moving one over, easy to use. Most all of them will, except for Arc Pro and ArcMap. Then one more to the right, copying stands from GIS layers. Most all of those, except for Survey 123 and Collector Map, will be able to do that. What about plot allocation? Well, there's fewer contenders here. Mobile Map, Inventory Manager, and ArcMap can be equipped to do that with Landmark's add-on tool, Easy Plot. What about efficient cruise data collection? Even fewer, with Mobile Map and Inventory Manager being our contenders And lastly, the ability to import and export to T-Cruise. Well, that alone is skill for functionality for inventory manager. All right, so let's just take a closer look at the solution that we're suggesting. And here's the design. As you can see, the solution we're presenting extends the ArcGIS platform. The Esri cloud in the middle provides a connection to all the other parts. You'll notice there is no special start or endpoint. And that's because this solution can be configured to many different workflows, as Carrie will illustrate later. Other parts include a mobile app called Mobile Map Cruise, a web application called Inventory Cruise that manages the cruise and imports data into many external systems, including T-Cruise. In the next slide, we'll take a deeper look into this solution. All right, moving left to right. Yeah, there you go, moving left to right. So please notice that this is an Android-based solution on which Mobile Map runs. Mobile Map can navigate to the plot, collect data, pictures, and more. You'll notice a significant feature is the micro SD card, which includes the following advantages. It's inexpensive storage. It extends storage capabilities of the device. It can be swapped out when switching work sites, such as regions and districts. It could also save your work in the unfortunate event something your unit gets damaged. It enables access to very large data sets offline, including imagery, LiDAR, roads, and topography. It also provides offline data backup to prevent data loss. Of course, moving to the right, we see that Arc Desktop, Pro, and Online, still very important to design those data cruise models and more. And of course, Inventory Manager, we can manage the cruise by populating the cruise stands, assign stands, and check cruise stands to whoever we want responsible for that, the cruiser or the contractor. We can monitor cruise progress, perform QA/QC, and we can do our own reporting and be able to import and export to external systems. So one of those systems, of course, is T-Cruise, which we'll tell you a little bit more about next. So T-Cruise Desktop Pro, its functionality is a highly functional and customizable cruise processor. User-defined templates store species list, products, merge specs, volume function assignments, and reporting options. There are over 500 built-in volume functions with the ability to add user-defined tables and equations. It will handle most standard cruise methods. And as we mentioned earlier, you can import and export to Inventory Manager. There are several options for reporting, including Excel and Access. And in the standard Access reporting, you have user selectable volume variables, statistics volume variable, percent confidence and allowable error, and database export. There are 22 total reports available out of the box, 4 general info reports, 9 stand level, and 9 track level. All right, and moving on. So just a quick comparison here of iOS versus Android. Just something to think about. iOS, of course, is easy to use. It's familiar to many users, and IT staff like it. But when we put it on the balance for forestry use, we realized that Android has some perks, and that is that there are devices available. The GPS is available on Wi-Fi only devices. Of course, we mentioned the advantage of the SD card. Rugged devices are available, and there are a wide range of vendors, device specs, and costs. If you'd like more information about different devices, Landmark, we too have a virtual booth here, and we have an Android decision guide available on that virtual booth. And now I'll turn it over to Carrie for a live demo.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Okay, so what we're going to do is spend the next about a half an hour walking through a specific workflow that takes advantage of all the things that Mark has been talking about, using ArcGIS as the platform, the backbone of our solution, and walking data through the various apps. The hope is to show you how easy it is to conduct a standard forestry workflow and move data between the cloud and your devices, and complete your most common tasks. In order to do so, we're going to follow this as our general attack plan. And so if you start with me on the upper right, what we're going to do is start by allocating or defining stands. So we're going to select some stands from a database. And what we're going to do then is perform plot allocation or do a plot layout. And then we're going to download those data onto our mobile device running mobile map. And we'll demonstrate some of the functionality of mobile maps, such as the ability to navigate to field sites like plots and stands. And then we'll collect some forestry data. So we'll do a mock cruise on a plot or two. And then we'll pretend that we're coming back in and from the field, and we're going to upload those data. And then we'll jump back into Inventory Manager and see how we can review those data, look for quality control issues, and finally talk about the integration options and show how data can then be exported out of Inventory Manager for use into systems like T-Cruise and other forest information management systems. So that's the goal, to walk through that workflow. And what I want to do before we dive into that screen share portion is talk about how that workflow translates into the architecture that Mark talked about before. So he demonstrated how the whole system architecture fits together, but also specifically how the individual pieces do. And what I want to do is to talk about how the workflow follows through that. So this picture here tries to communicate that. What we're going to do is start, so if we follow this green arrow through the different components of the system, you can think of how the data are going to flow. So we're going to start an Inventory Manager by defining those stands. Those are going to get saved up into ArcGIS Online. Then we're going to download them into the mobile application where we're going to do our field data collection, and then upload them back to ArcGIS Online. At that point, they're visible again to Inventory Manager, where we're going to do our review and then export it out to T-Cruise. So this is our standard workflow, but there's also a lot of different variations. As Mark said, it's a very flexible and open system. So as we work with different clients to implement this, we often see different paths through that. And we've got some alternative workflows that we've prepared. And if we have time towards the end of this, we can walk through those. If not, you could follow up with questions about how this might differ from what you would want to use the system for. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Inventory Manager, and we're going to dive right into the demo. So give me a second to bring that up. Okay, so so you should be seeing now my browser, and we've got our Northeast demo application. And when it first loads, you see a base map. And what we've done, because we were supposed to be in Rhode Island, we really wanted to make it regionally specific. So we selected a natural area in Rhode Island, Arcadia management area. And what we're going to do is simulate a cruise in that area. So we did a little bit of reading about that area, looking at management activities in Rhode Island. And last year, there was a timber treatment or forest treatment that was conducted there. The idea was to focus on forest health, and they focused on 200 acres of Arcadia and did a selective thin with the goal of removing dead trees and to try to improve forest health in that area. So that's going to be our sample case, use case, as we walk through this demo today. So to get you calibrated, this is an Esri map coming in here. So we've got options for different base maps. I can zoom in and you can see some forest stands that we just digitized to the excellent Esri imagery here. If we wanted to look at other base maps, we could switch. I could look at a street view. We could look at topographic maps. All of these options are coming in from Esri's base maps. I'll stay focused on the imagery because it shows some of the distinctions in the stand boundaries. And what you can see is we've got multiple layers in here. So we have a source stands layer, and this is coming in from ArcGIS Online. And so lots of different ways you can get data into the system. But the idea in this scenario is that we have a base map that is our source stands. And what we want to do is to take some of those stands out in the field and use those as our inventory stands. So we're going to cruise one or more of these stands. So that's our starting point here. So let's begin by looking at one of those stands. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to identify a stand here and select it. And when I click on it, you can see that I can see the attributes of that stand. And what I'm going to do is to start by copying. So I'm going to copy this stand from our source layer into our cruise stands layer. So I select that as my target stand, or my target layer rather. And you can see that the system inventory manager is preparing to copy over all of the attributes. It can apply a cruiser ID, so I can be assigning this work to myself. That's my initials there. It starts with a default status that will help me understand whether this has been cruised or not cruised. It's showing me the acreage, and it's allowing me to define aspects of that cruise design. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that out, and I'm going to say that we're going to use point sampling, and we'll use a BAF of 20, try to be really efficient out in the field. And I'll do that both for the saw and the pulp plots. And then we'll also set in here submerge fixed nested plots. Select those, and if you're in this area and that's not exactly how you would cruise it, apologies for that. But you can see how it's very flexible in the cruise design. And I think that's an important thing to point out, that this is highly configurable. We've got a sample data set here that we do for demos in the Northeast, but the system is entirely configurable. You can use the attribute fields you want, the field sampling methods you want. We're just showing you a very simple example to demonstrate the capabilities. So once I've defined the parameters of this cruise, I can go ahead and say copy. And when I do that copy, what it has done is it has taken the geometry and the stand ID, and it's copied into my active cruise layer. So if I turned off, for example, those source stands, you can see this new stand has been added as a stand that's ready to be cruised. So before I go out in the field, I want to allocate some plots. So if I click on that stand, I can go to the plots tab here in Inventory Manager, and I can do a plot layout. Clicking the first time uses the default settings, and you can see it's set to do a plot count of 10 with a rectangle pattern and a starting plot ID. Let's change that a little bit. So I'd rather use a plot density and put in 1 plot for every 2 acres. Take a look at that. There you can see I'm getting more plots. Maybe I don't like the way that these are lined up and I want to choose a different layout. I'll switch to a diamond layout, which will offset every other row. Okay, that looks good to me. You can see that it's already gone ahead and copied over, or what we call inherited, the cruise design from the stand to the plots. So as I go in and create these plots now, each one of those plots will already know the design that we specified at the stand level. So when I say save plots, those plots then go from being designed to actually being created. And if you think back to that architecture diagram that I showed earlier, what that means is these plots have now been created in ArcGIS Online. So the moment I do that, they're available for other users of the system. So if Mark had Inventory Manager up on his desktop right now, he would see those plots available. And any user who is getting ready to go out in the field would see them in mobile map and could download them and take them out in the field for offline use. Now, before we switch over to the mobile application, I just want to point out a few other things about Inventory Manager here. And most of these are things we're going to revisit when we come back from the field. So along the top, we've got some other tools. And some of these are how we define parameters of the system. So we've got things like business rules. And when I go to the business rules tab, you can see there's a couple of business rules that we've created. So I've got a warning here that says if the diameter of a tree is greater than 30 inches, give the user a message. That's a way to help enforce data quality when we're out in the field. And we've got an even more strict rule around DBH that if it's greater than 100, make that an error and physically block a user from creating that data. We don't expect to see any trees out there with a greater than 100 DBH. So when we go out in the field, I'll intentionally try to create some bad data so that we can see how those business rules get applied in the field. Another thing I wanted to point out is that we have in here is a concept of dashboards. And this is a real key component of the Esri ecosystem. One of their very powerful tools is their dashboard technology. And we integrate that into Inventory Manager because we build our software on the ArcGIS platform. When we look at the dashboard now, it doesn't look that exciting. There's not that much going on. That's partly because we haven't collected much data on this cruise. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out and collect some data, and we'll come back and look at this dashboard and see how it changes. So this just has a few sample data trees and plots that I put in just to verify it was all set up. But on a larger project, I'll just show you an example for a larger project. This is something out here in the Pacific Northwest. You can see how a dashboard could be a very powerful tool for tracking the productivity or the progress of a cruise by looking at which stands have been measured. You can look at productivity by cruiser. You can even look at accuracy by cruiser by applying check cruise rules. And you can look at the distribution of tree species and so on and so forth. So we'll check back in on this again before we, or when we come back from the field. So with that, what I'm going to do is switch over to mobile map, and we'll demonstrate what the experience is like for a field forester. To do that, what I've got here is a screen that's doing a screen share of my tablet. So this isn't a simulation or anything. This is a tablet that's sitting on my desktop here, and I have it shared via another screen share program here. So I've got a Teams window up that's showing the screen of my tablet up here. I've just pulled it to the front. And one of the things I'm doing to help make this demo work is I'm going to use a GPS spoofing technology that's going to pretend that I'm moving down a road in our study area. So I'm going to turn that on right now. So it starts playing this GPS path coming down here. And with that, I'll switch over to mobile map. And so if you ignore that GPS for just a moment, and let's think about the activity of going out into the field with mobile map. From the desktop application, we selected a stand we wanted to cruise, and we allocated plots. So before I head out into the field as a forester, what I want to do is connect my tablet to a Wi-Fi connection and then download those data. I want to have all those data downloaded on my device before I head out in the field so that I can work offline in case I don't have connectivity out in the field. So I'll start by opening up the Actions menu and say Download. And what mobile map is doing right now is it's going through all of the layers of that feature service in ArcGIS Online, and it's downloading data. You can see it brought down a number of plots. It's telling me that it added plots and that it brought down one stand. So that's what I expected because I just created a new cruise stand and cruise plots. So let's, it reloads the map. It tells me about what it loaded, and I'll zoom out here just a little bit so we can see those data. So that's the stand and the plots, and you can see that it matches that plot layout that we just created. And so with that, we're ready to go and collect data. Now, before we collect data, I want to point out just a few other features in mobile map. It's got this high resolution base map. You can see very good resolution. You're seeing individual tree crowns in cases. And mobile map has a lot of flexibility in what base map data it can display. You can have multiple layers and they can be loaded simultaneously. So if I wanted to also have a different kind of a base map, I can turn layers on and off just like you would in any GIS, because mobile map really is a mobile GIS. I'm going to turn that back off, but you get a sense of what you could have out in the field in terms of base map data. We see people bringing out USGS topos, even very high resolution color infrared imagery. We've even seen people using LiDAR derived digital canopy models. Any data set that you can create in a desktop GIS, it can be packaged up and brought out in the field in mobile map. And mobile map also has the ability to download base maps directly within the application. So for the base maps I'm using for this demonstration today, I didn't use desktop GIS at all. I just went into the download base map tool in mobile map, and I downloaded from Esri's base map collection the high resolution color imagery that you're seeing here. Okay, so now I want to talk about search and navigation. So maybe I've had some data assigned to me, like this stand that needs to be cruised, and I want to figure out which one it is that's been assigned to me. I can use the identify tool here in the lower left, select the stands layer, and now initiate a search by using that magnifying tool in the upper right. When I do that, it says, okay, you're going to search stands. What field do you want to use? I can say something like cruiser ID, and I can say where it contains KQH, and I can do a search. What mobile map does is it takes that data set that's offline, downloaded to my, my device, so this works even if you don't have an internet connection. It searches the data for the attributes that I put in, like cruiser ID, KQH, and it provides it there in an attribute table. When I tap on it, it zooms right to that area. So you can see how this could really help when you're managing large cruises. Maybe you've got contractors. You can be assigning data to those contractors using cruiser ID or any attribute field. You might have a company name attribute field, or a property, or a state. However you define those, users can download only the data that's selected, that's intended for them, or maybe they download all the data, but they just use the search functionality to find the areas that they're supposed to visit. Okay, let's talk about navigation. So I was able to find the stand that I want to measure, but now I want to navigate to it. And maybe I don't want to just navigate to the stand. I know that I want to start here on plot 6 because it's near the road. And so that's a good place for me to start my cruise. So what I can do is go to my identify tool again, and this time select plots and tap on that plot to select it. What happens first is it opens up a read-only view of those data. And I can go ahead and close this at this point because what I've done is I've told mobile map that that is the plot that I'm interested in going to. And you can see that it's highlighted there with a blue halo. Once mobile map knows that you've selected a feature, and if it has a GPS signal, then it's ready to navigate to that. And one of the key navigation tools is just the visual data itself. So if I zoom out here, you can see the plot down here in the lower right, and you can see myself driving down this road. The GPS is showing me my current location, and the white arrow inside that blue dot is showing me my direction of travel. So as long as your direction of travel is heading towards where you're going, that's one good visual clue that you're heading in the right area or heading in the right direction. You can also look up here to see the distance. So it's showing me right now in feet. So I'm about a half a mile away, and it's showing me the direction. So as the distance is closing, if you're heading in the right direction, you know you're heading towards your target. The other thing we have in mobile map is the ability to use proximity alerts. So as you get close to your plot and you're getting ready to measure it, you can set a proximity alert to notify you that you've arrived at plot center. What you don't want to do, obviously, when you're out there doing sampling is to bias your plot center, your location of your plot center. So by setting a proximity alert, typically something like 20 to 30 feet, when you get within that distance, the proximity alert will notify you. So you'll hear a beeping sound. That lets you know that you're at plot center and you should stop immediately and start collecting data. So what I'm going to do here is just switch the GPS, the fake GPS, and I'll switch it to a fixed point that's just outside of our stand, save us the time of driving there. And so here we are. So we've parked our truck on the side of the road, and we're ready to head to that plot 6. And you can see that it's at 300 feet at a direction of 216 degrees. So for this scenario, let's just pretend we've done the walk through and we're at plot 6. We got the alert from the system and we're ready to collect our data. So in mobile map, collecting data, collecting tree data for a plot, we think of that as editing a plot. And so I'm using the edit tool in the lower right, and I'm selecting the plot layer as the layer I want to edit, and I'm tapping on that plot to open it up. When that plot opens up, what you see is a data entry form. And just like you would see this form in Collector or any other field application, you can see that there's fields, and based on the field, there's different user interfaces. So for status, for example, it's a dropdown, and I can see the options, a planned plot, an active plot, a cruise plot. I'll leave that one for now because I haven't yet cruised it. You can see the attributes from the plot design. You can see our plot size and all the attributes that we created when we did our plot allocation. There's also my cruiser ID has been auto-populated for me, and there's an option to enter in notes. And so if I want to enter anything in, I can just use the keyboard that's down at the bottom, and the keyboard responds to whatever data type. So if this was a numeric field, I would only see numbers. If it accepted floating point data or decimal data, I would see the decimal point, but if it was integer data or whole numbers, I wouldn't see that. So let's go ahead and dive in and start collecting some trees. So I hit the tree icon in the upper right, and what opens up now is the tree list. And you can see we've intentionally designed the tree list to be as much like a tally card as we possibly could, or think of it as an Excel table. The goal here is to provide a user interface that's as efficient as possible for collecting data. So given the area where we're located, we're going to be collecting data such as white pine, red oak, red maple. And we typically use numeric species codes when we're collecting data in mobile map. The reason for that was a couple reasons for that. One is when you are in a number field, you will see a number keypad, which presents nice large buttons that are easy to press. If this was a alphanumeric field, where we would see a full keyboard, or what people call a QWERTY keyboard, you'd have a lot more options, which means all the buttons would be smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start entering in some data. So maybe my first tree is a white pine, and that is code 129. Now that's the FIA numeric code. Once again, mobile map is completely configurable, so you could use your own species codes, and you could use alpha codes, but in this case, we're using the FIA codes. And maybe I'll do my next one will be a red oak. And you can see I am able to enter in values going down. So maybe I'm using a prism or something and I'm spinning the plot and I'm just recording species on the first pass. And I'll do another one here, which is red maple. Now, if I don't know my species codes, I can hit the question mark tool here in the center top, and it'll show me my list of allowed values. It's drop down. I can look at that and say, oh, the next one, yeah, I was seeing that there's a white oak coming up, and I can scroll through that list and find that white oak is 802. So I'll say okay, and I'll enter in a white oak. Now, as far as DBH, we'll just enter in some dummy data here just to show how it works. Maybe this one is a 15-inch tree, and that's an 11, and maybe that's a 12-inch, and maybe this white oak is a big one, and maybe that's, actually, let me test my business rule. So let's go ahead and enter in a tree here that's 31 inches. So at any point, if I want to save these data, I can hit the disk icon that's in the upper right here to tell it to save those trees. And you see when I do that, I'm seeing a whole bunch of validation errors. One of those was my business rule here, tree 4, DBH greater than 30. It's just a warning. It's not an error, so I could still continue to save it, but I've got a number of other problems here. In this data model, we have made it required to enter in a height. So I'll go through and enter in some height values. So maybe this one was 55 feet, and this one's 40, and we've got a 35, and this one was up there at a whopping 100 feet. Now, if I try to save again, I see it's just that warning. If I say OK and save, the final time it says all tree records successfully saved because that was a warning. Now, if I did another error, like enter in a species that doesn't match the codes, and as soon as I leave that cell, you can see it warns me. It doesn't stop me from collecting data because I may be moving really quickly. I want to just get these data punched in. Perhaps I'm working with somebody else and they're calling out those numbers. But you can see how it's throwing it's got various ways of enforcing data integrity and data quality as we move along. So I will change that one back. I think I had that 371. Okay, if you're grading trees or recording things at the log level, we can do that by hitting the pencil icon, and now you can see what we call logs. Some people call that grades. So maybe I'll enter in some grade information for this particular tree. I'll put in 8 feet of grade 0 and maybe 32 feet of grade 1. Once again, if I don't know what those grades are, I can hit the question mark to open up that tool, and I can see saw timber, pulpwood, coal, tip, etc. So with that, I'll close out of the log list, and I will go ahead and close my tree list. Now notice here as I close the tree list, I'm doing that by just hitting the back arrow. And whenever we close the tree list, it's going to go ahead and save all our trees. It's also going to back up our entire database. So there was just a brief pop-up that happened there where it said backing up database. And what it's doing at that point is it's taking a full snapshot of everything that's new or edited since we last uploaded our data. It's making a copy of that and it's moving it to the external storage on your micro SD card. That means if you right now drop this device into a stream or even damage it running over it in a car, something like that, you can take that micro SD card out and retrieve the data off of that, either by putting it into another device or loading it into your PC. So we've got a number of different systems for redundancy within Mobile Map to ensure data integrity and make sure your data are protected, because there's nothing worse than losing a day's worth of field data. So as I'm finishing up this plot, I'm going to go ahead and change its status from planned to cruised, and I'll go ahead and save it. That saves it, closes it, and you can see now that it's changed the color to green. Maybe I'll do the same thing for the stand just to update that. So I'll change my edit tool to stands, select that stand that I'm in, and I'll go ahead and change its status from planned to cruised and save that. At this point, the stand boundary turns green, and I've done my first plot. You can see how this would proceed from plot to plot, each time selecting the new plot, using the navigation tools to navigate to it, and then collecting your tree data. So with this, I'm going to wrap up the mobile portion, and we'll assume that I've selected all these plots, and I've gone to each one of them. I've collected my field data, and I'm back in the office. And now what I want to do is take the next step in the workflow by uploading those data. So I'll go into the Actions menu and hit Upload Features. It goes through each layer, finds all of the new data, and shows me the results. So I can see that I've updated a plot because I changed its status. I've added 4 trees, and I've updated the stand because I changed the status of that. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to the web application, and I'm just going to refresh the map here so that we can see those updated data. And I'll use the Zoom to tool and select stands, and we'll go ahead and zoom in. Actually, I think it was that stand. So now you can see here, you can see the color change to indicate that this has been cruised, and you can see the plot is now green. So clicking on the plot, I can now see the data that I collected. So here's all the individual tree records, and you can see the log information that we collected for tree number 2. If I wanted to, I could adjust values. So maybe that tree that I said was a 31 really shouldn't have been a 31. And I have it in my notes that the biggest tree out there was a 28. I can update that. And so much like the ease at which I was able to collect the tree data in the field, I can do the same thing back in Inventory Manager. And so, so you can see how Inventory Manager then supports that workflow by allowing you to do your data quality control, your data editing, your review. Let's talk again about dashboards real quick. So we had this dashboard here that we said there wasn't a whole lot going on. It hasn't changed a whole lot, but you can see a slight change. So now we've cruised one of our stands, and that's showing up as a progress. We only have 3 stands that we've created in this sample data set, so it represents a third of it. But you can imagine how this interface can get used throughout the course of a cruise project to keep close tabs on how things are progressing. You can also see patterns emerging as far as the distribution of trees, maybe distribution of sizes by looking at their diameters by species and so forth. So that Esri dashboard technology is really critical, and the way it's connected into that same data model within Inventory Manager provides that insight into how your cruise is going. And then the final thing we want to talk about is the integration piece with external systems. So when we have this data that we've collected here in the map, an important part is getting that data back out for other analysis systems. And so we've talked about the strength and power of T-Cruise for doing compilation and reporting. So what I want to do now is just export these data for T-Cruise. So I can click on it to select that stand, and I can go over here to the Export tab. Now, if I just wanted to export the spatial data, I could do that. We've got formats like shapefile, KML, even just basic CSVs. But in this case, I want to do a compilation and run some reports. So going to the Export tool, I can select Export for T-Cruise. Now, important part of our export system is that it's highly configurable. So we support other types of exports, just export out to Excel or export for the US Forest Service FVS tool for growth and yield modeling. In this case, because I'm exporting for T-Cruise, what I need to do is select a configuration file that maps between our Esri data model and T-Cruise data model. So I'm going to choose that file. And when that opens up here, I've got some different configuration files, and I'm going to choose my T-Cruise export file, and I'll click Export. So what it's doing right now is it's going through my data set, going through the stands, the plots, the trees, the logs, and it's showing me this, and it's now downloading here a T-Cruise export file. What that is a SQLite database that, that loads directly into T-Cruise. And I think with just the final minutes here before we switch into question and answer, I was going to open up T-Cruise so you can see how that could be loaded into that system. So here in T-Cruise, if I wanted to load that data and start my analysis, I can come in here and say File, Import Options, Import MBG Cruise File. When I do that, I'll select from my downloads the data set I just created. I'll tell it that it's a incoming SQLite database. I can see this one that just came in. Click on it to open up. Say yes, I want to save it locally, replacing my temporary copy. And now I can go right in and start looking at those data. So I'm choosing to look at plot 1, and let's see, no, that's not what I was thinking. Let me go and start by looking at my tract information. Here you can see that that was a 41 acre plot. You can see my cruiser ID, and let's see. And I am not a T-Cruise expert, so I think I'm doing something wrong actually there. You can see the plot information, but I'm not seeing those trees. I think in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is, instead of trying to problem solve that, I think we want to switch over and go into questions and answers. And it looks like we've got about 10 minutes left. And I think what we wanted to start by doing was to just have this be, kind of organic, allow people to ask questions. Make sure if you want to ask a question that you're turning, if you have your microphone muted, that you're unmuting your microphone. And we're happy to, I'll leave the application open and the mobile app here. So if we want to take a deeper look at any of those, we can do so. So go ahead and open the floor to questions.
Carrie, if you're checking the chat, we've already got a couple questions.
Okay, do you want to
get your bearings? I know you're doing a lot right away there.
Do you want to read one out? And
sure.
While I'm trying to find out how that works.
So one of them is talking about, can we export to FES?
Yes.
Yes. And then there's another one about, can National Volume Estimator Library at the U.S. Forest Service maintains be used in T-Cruise? So had to explore that, I guess. We had to get with Darren. I had to understand more about what that volume library is.
Yeah, let's talk to both those. So I'm just going to open this up in a new tab here. We'll do the same thing. I can just show what this looks like for FVS. So I'm going to select that that stand boundary again, go to export. This time I will choose the FVS configuration file and choose the export for FVS, and I'll say export. And as you're probably aware, FVS uses SQLite as well. And so as one of its formats. So here's an FVS database. And if I were to launch FVS, you'll see how easily that can come into FVS. Let me see if I can do that with all the apps I have open. But basically the short answer is yes. It supports FVS completely, and I can figure out how to launch it. And then your question about NVEL, or the National Volume Estimation Library. Yes, we support NVEL as well. And we actually have a cloud-hosted version of NVEL, so we can pass data into NVEL in order to do volume calculations using NVEL. And you can use the default volume equations based on species, region, district, what have you, or you can use set your own merge specs and what have you. So here, this new tab I'm opening is the FVS Forest Vegetation Simulator. So if I did a new run and I said I wanted to import the data, you could browse for the data set I just created, downloads, this is that FVS data set, and you could install and upload the database, and then go to runs, say I want to select all stands in the selected groups, and then choose 50 years. Yeah, we'll just use the default. Go to run and say save and run. And so now it's taking that data that we just collected and it's using that FVS format in the FVS. This is the new interface, not the older suppose interface. And it's showing over the next 50 years the projected cubic volume merchantable for that stand. So hopefully that addressed some of your questions about how it supports FVS and NVEL. What else do we have on the question list?
Sure. In terms of, we'll jump around a little bit, but on this same theme, someone was asking about exporting the data to SILVAH or NED/SIPS. So
SIL, not sure if somebody's talking about Silva, maybe?
I think that's the way it's spelled, probably. SILVAH.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question. So yeah, we do support Silva. So we have a Silva exporter. One of the implementers, or one of our clients that uses Inventory Manager, is Pennsylvania Game Commission. And so we work very closely with them in order to implement a Silva export functionality from Inventory Manager. I don't have that showing here loaded into this demo site, But yeah, we can support Silva 7. So it can take any of your data and write it out into a Silva 7 file. When you download it, you can just click on it. It opens right up in Silva, so you can take advantage of that great tool. Yeah, and we work with, was it Scott Tomasma, as there's updates to Silva to make sure that we're staying compatible with developments of the Silva application.
Okay. Okay, and moving on, we had a question about being able to add the XY coordinates to the trees data.
Great question. So currently we don't do that out of the box. We have always focused on the XY coordinates of the plot. That said, it's a highly configurable application, so there's no problem in adding XY fields to the trees. So if you want to take the tree tables and add any custom fields, that can be done. The question starts becoming, though, how do you want to populate that? And so whether you want to use a GPS to populate that because you believe you have a high enough precision sub-meter your GPS that could do that, that certainly is an option. And then we've had some users do things like calculating a distance and direction and recording that. And then we process that on the back end to translate that into an X and Y by calculating via trig the offset. I will point out that we do have one project as well where we take mobile map and we mount it in feller bunchers, so in machines, harvesting machines. And in that scenario, we do record the sub-meter accuracy GPS location of all trees right as they are harvested. And that's an automated harvest detection when a user presses the saw trigger on the machine operator, the joystick, I call it, to cut the tree. It at that point records that sub-meter accuracy location of the tree. So you have every tree point. So it's a really interesting question. If you want to talk more about that, reach out to us via our virtual booth or via email. Would love to talk to you about XY coordinates on trees. It's a very interesting topic.
Excellent, excellent. And I mean, that goes true for anyone at Landmark, myself, or anyone at Landmark, and Carrie. We can continue this conversation going even after this session. But a few more questions here, Carrie. And I think I know the answer to this. Is mobile map available for use currently? And I think the answer
Absolutely.
is yes.
Yeah.
All right. And then, cost always comes up, and we have a question about that is, what's the cost of software for a small 1 to 3 forester office?
Yeah, it's a great question. And usually we answer that question with a bunch more questions because, an important part of what Mark and I have shown here is how we're incorporating this, our technology, how we're building upon the ArcGIS platform. And so up until recently, what we would have told you is, well, it's important that we understand how you have your Esri licensing. If you already are an Esri customer, you've already embraced what Esri can do, you've got skills, you're using desktop GIS, maybe you're playing with ArcGIS Online and Collector, then great. And then our system can come in, plug right into that. And I guess we've got some exciting new news is that we've been, through our partnership with Esri, we've been working on a completely hosted or software as a service offering where we can now bundle in ArcGIS named user accounts as a part of an offering. So for smaller shops that maybe aren't already Esri customers, we can now offer you sort of a holistic package where you would get the web application, you get the mobile application, you get the ArcGIS access, and it's all just a turnkey solution. So we'd love to, if you're interested in the system, we'd love to talk to you, make sure we understand where you're coming from, make sure that all of your use cases and everything are supported, or if not, that we know how we would address them. And then we can talk about the exact pricing for your scenario.
Yeah, that's a great, that's a great way to approach it. We just need to have a conversation and see what we can do to make it work for you. Just a time check, we've got 1 minute left. We just want to make sure that people, if they need to jump to other meetings, they can do that. We will continue on, Carrie, I think, if you have time. One thing that I just realized, and I'm trying to get the answer on, is what is the verification code for this session? So if you need that, let us know if we don't get it to you before we end this session. Okay, but I have reached out to our moderator who has needed to jump to another meeting and left me as a moderator. All right, so a couple other questions. The question is, so Inventory Manager, Mobile Map, and T-Cruise are software programs that are purchased separately but can work together, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a key part of our solution is that all of these tools work together. They also all work independently. So we have some clients that use Inventory Manager by itself. Not that many, but we do have some. We've got many clients who use Mobile Map by itself. And obviously Landmark has a long history of having many clients using T-Cruise outside of this context. What we've been really focusing on here through our partnership together is making these very seamless of how they move data among the different applications and really leveraging the fact that ArcGIS is that backbone that allows the data to be accessible from each one of these applications. So they can work together, all three of them, or they can work in components. We think the real power, the real value proposition is when you take advantage of all of them, because hopefully you saw how easy it was for us to use a web-based GIS to start the process, quickly take that out in the field with our mobile application, bring it back up and have it right into T-Cruise ready to do a compilation.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Just a little bit distracted trying to get that verification code for folks. So hang with us.
See if I could check the chat, if I can figure out how to do that.
And I see one, Carrie, from Dave Course, just asking about, is this session being recorded, and is that going to be available? I don't know the answer to that one. I'm not sure if somebody on SAF, it looks like I see the record button.
It is being recorded. We talked about that beforehand with the moderator, so it is being recorded. We'll have to figure out how it gets made available, but I'm assuming through the SAF website that they'll have access to these.
All right, and thanks to Brig, he says, according to the SAF and the schedule, the Innovation Zone meetings do not qualify for CFE. So that's the first I've realized that. Yeah, we will work with each of you. We've got the attendance, so we'll work with you. If indeed there is a verification code, we'll work to get that back to you. All right, and so I know just a time check, it's 11:02. If people need to go, we understand. There's one really good question here, Carrie. Let's see if we can both get on this. I'll try and read it. When assigning several quality classes to a tree, can you export individual log data having the tree number repeated and every quality class added in a separate row? So 4 qualities equals 4 rows. Each row
Yes.
with a, yep.
Yeah, short answer is yes, that's exactly how it works. Now, if you're going into T-Cruise, the T-Cruise data model is a little bit different. So T-Cruise data model has essentially 20 placeholders to the right on the tree list. So it adds 20 tree grade columns, 20 tree length columns, and 20 tree defects, or I should say log lengths, grades, and defects. So, and that's just the behind the scenes T-Cruise data model. And so of course we support that. If you're doing an export just to an Excel file or a CSV file, then that's exactly what happens. Is you end up with a table that has 1 row per log, and so that would have the grade, length, and the defect. And we've got some users that record log lengths, some that include that record the height to the top of the log, and then we can back calculate out those log lengths. But that's exactly the way we do it if you're just doing a standard Excel export of your data, is one row per quality class. That's a great question. So I wanted to follow up on the question from Peter Hoagland about NED SIPs. I'm actually not familiar with that application, so please reach out to me on that one. I would love to hear more about that, because certainly our goal is to support as many different analysis and inventory management systems as possible. So while we've put a lot of energy into Silva and feel really excited about the support that we have for Silva, we have not worked with NED, SIPS, and so would love to hear more about that and see what it would take to support those systems. And a follow up on the is mobile map available for use currently? I guess I just wanted to say, since we're sitting here at the SAF convention, we debuted mobile map version 1.0 at this conference in 2013. So this is now 7 years that mobile map is available. Inventory Manager has been in production use for far less time. I think we're about 4 years out since our first production use of Inventory Manager. Our earliest adopter has been using it for about 4 years in production. So growth has continued at quite a quick pace, and the amount of changes and improvements over that time have been dramatic. But these are definitely mature systems that have many hundreds of foresters out there using these in the field. So there's a lot of development and feedback that we've had over the years, and these are ready to go, ready to be deployed in your organization if it seems like they're a good fit.
Good deal. Good deal. I think that ends the questions, unless anyone would like to unmute themselves and speak up. Otherwise, we do apologize for what's going on with the verification code, and we'll have to get back to you that. If you don't have my contact information, you can find me in the virtual waiting room. That would be, and anyways, I'll take it upon myself. If we do get that, we'll try and get that information to you. Any other closing, anything else we need to close out with, Carrie?
No, I don't think so. Just thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate all the great questions. We would love to keep that conversation going, so please reach out to us. And as Mark said, we both have in the exhibitor booths from the main page of the conference. We both have chats open, and we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much. We look forward to continuing the conversation. All right, Carrie, I'll go ahead and end the session, and we'll meet up soon.
Sounds good. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.